The persistent rain drummed against the windows of Ethan Parker's mountain workshop, providing a steady rhythm to accompany his careful soldering. At 42, the former military engineer had grown accustomed to the solitude of his self-imposed exile, finding peace in the precise movements of his work and the quiet of the Montana wilderness. His calloused hands moved with practiced efficiency across the circuit board of his latest project, a sophisticated security system that would help keep his property safe from unwanted visitors. The sharp crack of thunder made him pause, his eyes drawn to the darkness beyond his windows. Something felt different tonight, a change in the air that went beyond the storm's electric charge. Ethan had learned to trust his instincts during his years in special operations, and right now, those instincts were screaming that something was coming. The security sensors he'd installed throughout his property remained silent, but the hair on the back of his neck stood on end. He set down his soldering iron and reached for the modified handgun he kept within easy reach, a habit he'd never managed to break. A blinding flash of purple light illuminated the entire workshop, followed by an impact that shook the building to its foundation. Ethan's military training kicked in instantly. He moved swiftly to the monitors that displayed feeds from his security cameras, watching as the smoke cleared from what appeared to be a crash site just beyond his workshop. Through the rain and darkness, he could make out a sleek, crystalline vessel, its surface pulsing with a fading violet glow. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen in his years working on classified military projects. As he watched, a section of the craft's hull shifted and opened, revealing two figures stumbling out into the storm. Ethan's finger tightened on his weapon's trigger as he moved toward the workshop's reinforced door. The larger figure appeared to be supporting the smaller one, their movements urgent but unsteady. As they approached, the security lights activated, revealing details that made Ethan question his sanity. The taller figure was clearly female, but her skin shimmered with an iridescent silver hue that no human makeup could achieve. She wore what appeared to be battle armor, its surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to move in the rain. In her arms, she carried a child who couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old, wrapped protectively in what looked like a blanket made of living metal. "Please," the woman called out, her voice carrying a melodic quality that seemed to resonate in Ethan's chest. "My son needs help. We mean no harm." Ethan's tactical training warred with his basic humanity. The woman was clearly injured, favoring her right leg as she approached. The child in her arms appeared unconscious, their small form completely still. If this was some kind of trap, it was an elaborate one. "Stop where you are," Ethan commanded, his voice firm but not hostile. "Set the child down and keep your hands where I can see them." The woman's expression shifted from desperation to fierce protectiveness. "I will not release my son. If you wish to help us, you must accept that we come together. We are being hunted by forces that would destroy your world as easily as they would end our lives. I am Valera of the Stellar Guard, and my son Ryan carries within him the potential to either save or doom countless civilizations." A series of distant explosions lit up the night sky, followed by the unmistakable sound of atmospheric entry. Ethan's security systems began blaring warnings of multiple incoming objects. Whatever was hunting them had arrived. Ethan made his decision. Inside. Now. He stepped aside, keeping his weapon ready but pointed away from the pair. As Valera hurried past him, he caught the scent of ozone and something exotic, like crystallized starlight. Once inside, Ethan quickly secured the workshop's defenses, activating countermeasures that would help mask their presence from conventional detection methods. He turned to find Valera laying her son on his workbench, her armored hands moving with surprising gentleness as she checked his vital signs. "He's in shock," she explained, her voice tight with concern. "The emergency quantum jump took more out of him than I anticipated. His body is still adapting to its emerging abilities." Ethan moved closer, his engineer's mind already cataloging the impossible technology before him. Valera's armor appeared to be a living thing, adjusting and shifting to accommodate her movements. The child's skin had the same silvery sheen as his mother's, but occasional pulses of energy seemed to race just beneath its surface. "You said you're being hunted," Ethan said, checking his security feeds. Multiple objects were now entering the atmosphere, their trajectory suggesting a search pattern. "By whom?" Valara's expression darkened. "The Crimson Dominion. They seek to harness my son's developing abilities for their war machine. They've already destroyed our homeworld searching for him. Earth is one of the few planets still hidden from their influence, protected by its isolation and primitive technology." She paused, reading Ethan's reaction. "No offense intended." "None taken," Ethan replied dryly, his mind racing through options. His years in special operations had taught him to adapt quickly to changing situations, but aliens seeking refuge from space fascists was definitely a first. "Your son. What exactly can he do?" Before Valera could answer, Ryan's eyes snapped open. They were a swirling mass of silver and violet, and as he gazed at Ethan, the engineer felt a gentle probe brush against his consciousness. Images flooded his mind, distant worlds, vast fleets of crystalline ships, and a power that could reshape reality itself. "He can bridge the gap between thought and reality," Valera explained softly. "When his abilities fully mature, he will be able to manipulate the fundamental forces that bind the universe together. The Dominion would use him to remake entire worlds in their image." The distant whine of searching vessels grew closer. Ethan's decision had already been made the moment he'd let them inside, but now he committed to it fully. "My workshop has a hidden bunker beneath it. We should be able to avoid detection there while we figure out our next move." Relief flooded Valara's features, though her warrior's stance never fully relaxed. As Ethan led them to the concealed entrance, he couldn't help but wonder what other impossible changes this night would bring to his carefully ordered life. The universe, it seemed, had other plans for his retirement. The underground bunker hummed with the soft whir of air filtration systems as Ethan worked to modify his security setup. 3 days had passed since Valera and Ryan had crashed into his life, and each moment felt like walking a tightrope between safety and discovery. The Crimson Dominion search vessels had maintained their patrol pattern over the region, their advanced scanning technology making every second precarious. Ethan watched as Valera taught Ryan what appeared to be meditation techniques, their silvery skin catching the artificial light. The boy sat cross-legged on a makeshift bed, his small face scrunched in concentration as violet energy sparkled around his fingertips. Despite the danger they were in, there was something mesmerizing about watching the warrior's maternal side emerge. "His powers are growing stronger," Valera said quietly, sensing Ethan's attention. "Each day brings new manifestations that I'm not fully equipped to help him control." She stood with the fluid grace of a trained fighter, but Ethan had begun to notice the weight of responsibility in her bearing. "Maybe that's why you ended up here," Ethan replied, making final adjustments to a sensor array. "Sometimes the best teachers are the ones we least expect." He thought back to his own military mentors, how they'd shaped not just his skills but his character. A small giggle drew their attention. Ryan had managed to create a miniature galaxy between his palms, stars and planets swirling in perfect harmony. "Look, Mother. Just like home." His joy was infectious, but Ethan caught the flash of pain in Valara's eyes at the mention of their destroyed world. The moment was shattered by a piercing alarm from Ethan's security system. "We have incoming," he announced, rushing to the monitoring station. "Multiple signatures, moving in a search grid. They're using some kind of advanced thermal scanning technology I've never seen before." Valera moved to his side, her armor automatically shifting to combat readiness. "Dominion scout units," she confirmed, studying the readings. "They're capable of detecting the energy signature from Ryan's abilities. We need to." She was cut off by a violent tremor that shook the entire bunker. Dust rained from the ceiling as the sound of energy weapons impacting the ground above reverberated through the structure. "They found us," Ethan stated grimly, already moving to implement countermeasures. His fingers flew across the control panel, activating systems he'd hoped never to use. The bunker's shielding should hold for a while, but we need an exit strategy. Ryan whimpered, and the air around him began to crackle with uncontrolled energy. Valera rushed to her son's side, enveloping him in an embrace that seemed to calm the wild forces threatening to burst forth. "Focus, little one," she whispered. "Remember your training. Control, not suppression." Ethan watched the interaction while gathering essential supplies. In just 3 days, he'd seen enough to understand why the Dominion wanted the boy's power. But he'd also seen the pure heart behind that power, the innocent child who created galaxies for fun and smiled at everything new he discovered about Earth. "I have a tunnel system," Ethan announced, pulling up schematics on a screen. "Built it during my paranoid phase after leaving the service. It leads to a garage about 2 miles away where I keep an emergency vehicle." He paused, checking another monitor. "The problem is getting there without them tracking Ryan's energy signature." Valara's expression turned thoughtful. "My armor," she said slowly, "it's designed to absorb and redirect energy. If I can modify it to contain Ryan's emissions." She looked at Ethan with newfound intensity. "But I'll need your help. Your engineering skills combined with my knowledge of the technology might make it possible." Another explosion rocked the bunker, closer this time. The Dominion forces were zeroing in on their location. Ethan made a quick decision, moving to his workbench and pulling out specialized tools. "Tell me what you need." The next hour was a blur of precise modifications and technological integration that pushed the boundaries of Ethan's engineering knowledge. Valara's armor responded to their adjustments like a living thing, its crystalline structure adapting to accommodate the changes they made. Ryan watched with fascination as they worked, occasionally offering insights that seemed far beyond his years. "Your son," Ethan said during a brief pause, "he understands this technology at an intuitive level, doesn't he?" Valera nodded, pride mixing with concern in her expression. "His abilities allow him to perceive the underlying patterns of reality. Technology, energy, matter, they're all connected in ways his mind can naturally comprehend. It's both a gift and a burden for one so young." As if to demonstrate, Ryan reached out and touched the modified section of armor, causing the crystalline patterns to shift and align perfectly. "Like this, Mother," he said simply. "Now it will sing with me instead of trying to silence me." The constant bombardment above had taken on a rhythmic pattern, and Ethan recognized the tactical approach. "They're trying to weaken the bunker's structural integrity systematically," he explained. "We have maybe 20 minutes before they break through." Valera tested the modified armor, its surface now rippling with contained energy. "It's ready," she announced, lifting Ryan into her arms. The moment he made contact with the armor, the visible manifestations of his power seemed to fade, absorbed into the crystalline matrix they'd created. Ethan quickly gathered the last of their supplies, including weapons and communication equipment he'd modified to work with Valara's technology. As he led them toward the tunnel entrance, he found himself marveling at how quickly his life had transformed. A week ago, his biggest concern had been fine-tuning security systems for paranoid wealthy clients. Now he was helping an alien warrior protect her gifted son from an intergalactic invasion force. The tunnel entrance sealed behind them just as another explosion shook the facility. As they moved swiftly through the darkness, guided by Ethan's knowledge of the path and Valara's enhanced vision, Ryan reached out and took both their hands. The simple gesture carried with it a wave of trust and affection that resonated in Ethan's mind. In that moment, he realized that he'd do anything to protect this extraordinary child and his warrior mother. The universe had brought them to his door for a reason, and he was beginning to understand that some battles were worth fighting, no matter the odds. Dawn painted the Montana sky in shades of amber and rose as Ethan guided their modified vehicle through remote mountain roads. The emergency transport, a heavily reinforced military surplus truck he'd adapted over the years, moved with surprising stealth thanks to the integration of Valara's technology. In the back, Ryan slept peacefully, his small form wrapped in a blanket that shimmered with absorbed energy. "Your planet's sun," Valara observed from the passenger seat, her silver eyes reflecting the morning light. "It's younger than ours was. More vibrant." A shadow crossed her face. "The Dominion turned our star into a weapon when they couldn't find us. Billions died in moments." Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Tell me about them. The more I know about what we're facing, the better our chances." Valara's armor shifted subtly, responding to her tension. The Crimson Dominion began as a scientific faction, dedicated to unlocking the universe's fundamental forces. But power corrupted them. They discovered that certain beings, like Ryan, could naturally manipulate these forces. They began hunting them, experimenting on them, trying to replicate their abilities artificially. "And your people protected these gifted ones?" "The Stellar Guard was formed to defend all sentient life from exploitation," Valara explained. "We managed to hide most of the gifted children across different galaxies, but Ryan..." She glanced back at her sleeping son. "His potential exceeds anything we've ever encountered. The Dominion traced his energy signature across 12 star systems before we found Earth." A warning light flashed on the vehicle's modified dashboard. Ethan quickly pulled off the road, concealing them beneath a natural rock overhang. Moments later, 3 Dominion scout ships passed overhead, their crystalline hulls blood-red against the morning sky. "They're expanding their search pattern," Ethan noted, studying the tactical display he'd jury-rigged. "But they seem to be having trouble pinpointing us. Your armor modifications are holding." "For now," Valara agreed. "But Ryan's powers are still growing. Each day brings new manifestations that we'll need to learn to contain." She turned to face Ethan fully. "Why are you really helping us? You've risked everything for strangers who've brought danger to your doorstep." Ethan was quiet for a moment, watching as another patrol passed in the distance. "During my last deployment, my team was protecting a village of refugees. Women, children, families fleeing from warlords who wanted to use them as leverage in their power games. We were overwhelmed, took heavy casualties. I was the only one who made it out." He felt Valara's hand rest lightly on his shoulder, offering silent support. "I couldn't save them then," he continued. "But when I opened my door and saw you with Ryan, I knew I couldn't fail again. Some battles choose us." A soft glow from the back of the vehicle interrupted the moment. They turned to find Ryan sitting up, his eyes swirling with violet energy. "They're coming," he whispered. "The ones with hearts of crystal and minds of steel. They've called for the harvester." Valara's expression turned grave. "Are you certain?" When Ryan nodded, she cursed in a language that made the air crackle. "We need to move. Now." "What's a harvester?" Ethan asked, already starting the engine. "An autonomous hunting construct," Valara explained as they resumed their journey. "It doesn't just track energy signatures, it absorbs them. The Dominion uses them to capture gifted ones by draining their powers completely. Few survive the process." Ethan's tactical mind raced through options. "We need a defensive position. Somewhere we can set up countermeasures and protect Ryan while we figure out our next move." He pulled up a map on the vehicle's display. "There's an old military bunker complex about 60 miles north. It was abandoned after the Cold War, but I've used it to store equipment. We might be able to." The world exploded. A beam of crimson energy sliced through the air inches from their vehicle, turning the asphalt ahead into molten slag. Ethan swerved hard, his enhanced truck barely maintaining traction as more beams lanced down from above. "Harvester!" Valara shouted, her armor reconfiguring into battle mode. Through the windshield, they could see a massive crystalline construct descending from the clouds. It resembled a giant spider woven from strands of blood-red energy, each leg terminating in a weapon array. Ryan screamed as the Harvester's influence reached for him, trying to draw out his power. Valara's modified armor absorbed most of the drain, but the strain was visible on her face. "We can't let it lock onto him fully," she gritted out. The feedback would tear him apart. Ethan's military training took over. "Hold on." He yanked the wheel hard, taking them off-road and into the dense forest. The vehicle's enhanced suspension handled the rough terrain as they crashed through the underbrush, the Harvester's attacks splintering trees around them. "Ethan!" Valara called out. "The armor can't contain his energy much longer. When it fails," Ethan cut in, his voice steady, "we'll be ready. Ryan, remember what your mother taught you about control. Focus on my voice. Can you do that?" The boy nodded, his small face tight with concentration. The violent energy swirling around him began to stabilize, forming a coherent pattern rather than wild bursts. "Good," Ethan encouraged, even as he navigated their desperate escape. "Now, Valara, tell me everything you know about how these Harvesters work. If we're going to survive this, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." As Valara began her explanation, Ethan caught Ryan's eyes in the rearview mirror. The boy's gaze held both fear and determination, but also something else, a trust that made Ethan's heart clench. In just a few days, this extraordinary child and his warrior mother had become more important to him than he'd ever expected. The Harvester's shadow loomed over them as they raced through the mountain wilderness, its crystalline legs spanning the canopy like an apocalyptic web. But in the confined space of their fleeing vehicle, three unlikely allies prepared to make their stand. The universe had brought them together, and together they would face whatever horrors the Crimson Dominion had in store. The abandoned military bunker loomed before them, its concrete walls still imposing despite decades of neglect. Ethan crashed through the reinforced gate, the modified truck's engine screaming in protest as they raced into the underground vehicle bay. Above them, the Harvester's massive form blotted out the sky, its crystalline legs probing the facility's perimeter. "The walls are 3 feet of reinforced concrete," Ethan explained as they rushed from the vehicle. "But that won't hold it for long. This way." He led them deeper into the complex, through corridors lined with emergency lighting he'd installed years ago. Ryan stumbled, the Harvester's energy-draining field affecting him even through the layers of concrete. Valara scooped him up, but Ethan could see her armor flickering, struggling to contain the competing forces of her son's power and the Harvester's assault. They reached a circular chamber that Ethan had converted into a workshop. Tools and half-finished projects lined the walls, alongside racks of equipment that spoke to years of preparation for unnamed threats. "We make our stand here," he announced, activating a series of defensive systems. "The room's architecture can be used to create a resonance barrier, but I'll need help modifying it." Valara set Ryan down on a workbench, her armor now pulsing with dangerous levels of absorbed energy. "Whatever we do, it must be quick. The containment field is failing." As if to emphasize her words, arcs of violet energy began escaping from her armor's crystalline matrix. The ceiling shuddered as the Harvester began its assault on the bunker. Dust and small fragments of concrete rained down as its energy beams sought to penetrate their shelter. Ethan worked frantically, connecting pieces of equipment while Valara added her technological expertise to the modifications. "Mother," Ryan's voice was surprisingly calm despite the chaos. "I understand now. What I have to do." Both adults turned to find the boy standing, his small form surrounded by a perfect sphere of swirling energy. The random arcs and pulses had transformed into intricate patterns that seemed to follow some impossibly complex mathematical harmony. "The crystal minds," he continued, his voice carrying ethereal overtones. "They think they can control the universe's song, but they only hear echoes. I can show them the true music." "Ryan, no." Valara moved toward her son, but an invisible barrier held her back. "You're not ready. Using that much power could tear you apart." The chamber's lights flickered as the harvester's attacks intensified. Through the ceiling, they could hear the screech of crystalline legs tearing through concrete and steel. Ethan's tactical instincts told him they had minutes at most before the construct reached them. "Trust him," Ethan said suddenly, surprising himself. "I've seen how he understands things, Valera. The way he perceives patterns we can barely imagine." He met her desperate gaze. "Sometimes the student surpasses the teacher sooner than we expect." Ryan smiled at Ethan, and in that moment, the engineer felt a wave of pure affection from the boy. Then the child's expression turned serious. "But I'll need both of you. Mother's armor can channel energy, and Ethan's machines can focus it. Together, we can show the harvester what true harmony means." Understanding dawned in Valara's eyes. "A resonance cascade," she breathed. "Using my armor's absorption matrix. Combined with the chamber's architecture," Ethan continued, catching on. "We could create a feedback loop that amplifies Ryan's power while containing it in a stable pattern." The ceiling began to crack as crimson energy beams punched through. The harvester's legs, each longer than a city bus, started forcing their way into the chamber. The construct's core became visible, a pulsing crystalline heart that radiated malevolent purpose. They had seconds to act. Ethan raced to his equipment, making final adjustments to create the resonance pattern they needed. Valara's armor shifted, its structure reorganizing to form a perfect conducting matrix. At the center of it all, Ryan stood calm, his eyes now shining like twin galaxies being born. "Now, little one," Valera called out. "Show them what the universe's song truly means." Ryan raised his hands, and reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The energy he had been containing exploded outward, but instead of chaos, it moved with purpose. The violet light flowed through Valara's armor, which amplified and refined it. The enhanced power then struck Ethan's modified equipment, which focused it into precise geometric patterns that filled the chamber. The harvester froze, its crystalline structure resonating with the energy field Ryan had created. Through their combined efforts, the boy's power had been transformed into a perfect counterfrequency to the construct's own energy matrix. What happened next defied description. The harvester's crimson glow began to shift, changing from blood red to deep purple, then to blues and greens that had no names in human language. Its rigid crystalline structure became fluid, responsive to the universal harmonies that Ryan was channeling. "The song is in everything," Ryan explained, his voice echoing with power but still carrying the wonder of a child discovering something beautiful. "Even in things made to hurt and destroy. They just needed someone to help them remember how to dance." The harvester's form continued to transform, its weapon arrays dissolving and reforming into structures that resembled exotic flowers. The malevolent intelligence that had driven it was being rewritten by Ryan's understanding of reality's deeper patterns. Ethan watched in awe as the boy conducted this impossible symphony of matter and energy. He glanced at Valera and saw tears streaming down her face, not of fear or sorrow, but of pride and love for her extraordinary son. The chamber was now filled with dancing lights that moved in perfect harmony, the transformed harvester at their center. But Ethan could see that maintaining this level of control was taking its toll on Ryan. The boy's silver skin had become almost transparent, and his small frame trembled with effort. "Ryan," Ethan called out, parental instinct overriding his amazement. "You've done it. You can rest now, son." The word "son" had slipped out unconsciously, but its effect was immediate. Ryan's eyes found Ethan's, and a smile of pure joy lit up his tired face. The energy field began to stabilize, the patterns becoming self-sustaining as Ryan gradually released his direct control. Valera caught her child as he finally allowed himself to relax, his extraordinary display of power fading to a gentle glow. The transformed harvester settled into a crystalline configuration that hummed with peaceful energy, its purpose fundamentally altered by Ryan's connection to the universe's underlying harmony. As Ethan helped Valera tend to the exhausted but triumphant boy, he realized that their battle had revealed something profound. The true power hadn't been in the energy itself, but in the love and trust that had allowed them to work in perfect synchronization. Together, they had turned a weapon of destruction into a testament to the universe's capacity for transformation. The sunset painted the transformed harvester in colors that defied human description, its crystalline form now a monument to peace rather than destruction. 3 days had passed since Ryan's extraordinary display of power, and the consequences were still unfolding across Earth's skies. Ethan stood at the bunker's entrance, watching Valera teach her son new control exercises. The boy's silver skin had regained its healthy sheen, but now it occasionally rippled with patterns that matched the harmonious frequencies he had discovered within the harvester's matrix. "The Dominion ships are changing course," Ethan announced, checking the modified sensors they'd built using salvaged technology. "They're moving into attack formation. I count at least 12 capital ships entering the atmosphere." Valera's armor shifted subtly, but her voice remained calm for Ryan's sake. "They're desperate now. What we did to their harvester proved that their understanding of universal forces is fundamentally flawed. They can't allow that knowledge to spread." "Then let me show them too," Ryan said, his young face serious but unafraid. "Like you taught me, Mother, sometimes the greatest victory comes from helping your enemy understand." Ethan moved to kneel beside the boy who had become like a son to him. "It's not that simple, buddy. The Dominion's entire civilization is built on their belief that they can control and weaponize the universe's fundamental forces. What you showed them threatens everything they stand for." The ground trembled as the first Dominion warship descended through the clouds, its massive hull the color of spilled blood. Energy weapons began charging, their crimson glow reflecting off the mountainside. "They're targeting the population centers first," Valera observed grimly. "Standard Dominion tactics, threaten innocent lives to force their quarry surrender." But Ryan had closed his eyes, his expression peaceful despite the impending attack. "Listen," he whispered. "The transformed harvester, it's singing to its brothers and sisters. The song is spreading." Ethan and Valera watched in astonishment as pulses of energy began radiating from the crystalline form of the changed harvester. The waves carried the same harmonious patterns that Ryan had woven, reaching up toward the Dominion fleet like ripples in a cosmic pond. The effect was immediate and breathtaking. As each wave struck the warships, their blood-red hulls began to shimmer and shift. The rigid, aggressive angles of their design started flowing like liquid metal, transforming into organic curves that channeled energy rather than weaponizing it. "Impossible," Valera breathed, her warriors' training warring with wonder. The harvesters were all connected through a quantum network. "When we changed one, we showed them all a better way," Ryan finished, opening his eyes. They swirled with starlight but remained focused and clear. "And now they're sharing that understanding with the ships that created them. The crystal minds are learning to dance." Above them, the Dominion fleet had become a spectacular light show as ship after ship underwent the same fundamental transformation that had changed the harvester. Weapons arrays dissolved and reformed into structures that celebrated creation rather than destruction. The very essence of their technology was being rewritten by the universe's true harmony. "It's beautiful," Ethan said softly, standing between Valera and her son. Without conscious thought, he had placed one hand on Ryan's shoulder and the other at the small of Valera's back. They had become a family in these past days, forged in crisis but bound by something deeper than mere circumstance. Valera leaned slightly into his touch, her warrior's resolve softening. "The Dominion will send more ships," she warned, but her tone suggested she no longer feared that prospect. "Let them come," Ethan replied with a smile. "Earth could use more art in its skies. And something tells me they'll find a very different welcome than they expect." Ryan grabbed both their hands, and through the contact, they could feel his joy and love radiating like sunlight. "We can teach them all," he said with a child's simple wisdom. "The universe isn't meant for fighting. It's meant for dancing." The transformed Dominion ships now moved in graceful patterns through Earth's atmosphere, their presence no longer a threat but a promise of something new. Ethan knew there would be challenges ahead, explaining the situation to Earth's governments, helping humanity adjust to the reality of benevolent alien contact, and protecting Ryan as he grew into his extraordinary abilities. But looking at Valara's proud smile and feeling Ryan's small hand in his, Ethan knew they would face it all together. His quiet mountain refuge had become the birthplace of a revolution, not one of violence and conquest, but of harmony and understanding. "So," he said, squeezing both their hands, "what's our next step?" Valara's silver eyes met his, filled with warmth and possibility. "We build bridges," she replied. "Between worlds, between species, between ways of thinking." The Dominion sought to control reality's forces through dominance. "We'll show them, and everyone else, how to dance with them instead." Ryan's free hand traced patterns in the air, leaving trails of gentle light. "And we'll do it as a family," he added with certainty. High above, the transformed ships continued their celestial ballet, their crystalline forms catching the last rays of sunset and transforming them into colors Earth had never seen before. It was more than just a victory, Ethan realized. It was the dawn of something entirely new. As if reading his thoughts, Valara and Ryan moved closer, completing their embrace. They stood together, a former military engineer, an alien warrior, and a child who could speak to the universe itself, an impossible family made perfect by love, trust, and the courage to believe in something better. The stars were coming out now, twinkling with new possibility. Somewhere up there, the news was spreading across the galaxies, the age of conquest was ending. The age of harmony had begun. And it had started here, on a quiet mountainside, with 3 hearts beating as one beneath an Earth sky that would never be quite the same again.